The Galactic Empire stood as the ultimate power in the known universe, a colossal civilization spanning thousands of star systems. Its strength came from diversity, alien species of every imaginable form contributing to a vast collective. Yet, even the mightiest could falter. At the fringes of the Empire, the Zenter swarm emerged, a monstrous species of biomechanical insectoids that devoured entire planets, leaving nothing but desolate husks in their wake. The swarm operated with hive intelligence, its numbers seemingly infinite, and its adaptability unmatched. They were a scourge that even the Empire's finest armies had been unable to contain. Facing annihilation, the Galactic Council made a desperate decision. A universal broadcast was sent across the galaxy, calling for volunteers to fight the swarm. The recruitment announcement was grim and brutally honest. Survival is not guaranteed, the message warned, as holographic footage displayed planets being consumed by riding hordes of Zenter drones. The Empire promised unparalleled rewards, riches beyond measure, citizenship in the core worlds, and eternal glory for those brave enough to enlist. But the risks were clear. Most who signed up would never return. Across the galaxy, the response was muted. Species known for their combat prowess hesitated, unwilling to send their people into what many considered a suicide mission. To most, the Zenter swarm was a force of nature, something to be avoided, not confronted. But on a small blue planet in a relatively unremarkable star system, the message struck a different chord. Humanity, with its history of war, exploration, and relentless determination, didn't see the call as a death sentence. They saw it as an opportunity. On Earth, recruitment centers sprang up almost overnight. The largest of these was in New Geneva, where Captain Marcus Hale found himself seated among hundreds of eager volunteers. Marcus was a veteran of Earth's Global Defense Initiative, a man who had seen his share of conflict during humanity's tumultuous rise to unity. His face was weathered, his eyes sharp, and his demeanor unshakable. Around him, the room buzzed with energy as humans watched the Empire's broadcast on massive holographic displays. The footage was harrowing. Planets reduced to lifeless shells, fleets torn apart by the swarm's relentless attacks, and soldiers overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of the enemy. Yet, where others saw despair, Marcus saw a challenge. "They think we're weak," he muttered to himself, noting the Empire's subtle condescension in how it described humanity as a species with potential. To Marcus, this was a chance to prove them wrong. When the hologram ended, a recruitment officer, a tall, insectoid alien with iridescent skin, addressed the room. "The Empire thanks you for your interest. Be warned, this mission is not for the faint of heart. Those who join will face the deadliest enemy the galaxy has ever known. If you value your lives, leave now." No one moved. If anything, the human seemed even more determined. Marcus stood, his voice calm but resolute. "Where do I sign?" he asked. His words broke the tension, and the room erupted in cheers and laughter. Word of humanity's overwhelming response spread quickly across the galaxy. In the Empire's core worlds, bureaucrats were baffled. They had anticipated a few hundred recruits at most, not the tens of thousands of applications that flooded their systems. Skepticism ran high among the Empire's military leaders. Humanity, after all, was a newcomer to the galactic stage. They were seen as primitive, unpredictable, and overly emotional, a species that relied more on instinct than strategy. On the day Marcus boarded the transport ship bound for the Empire's central training hub, he felt the weight of those prejudices. The ship's interior was vast, filled with recruits from dozens of species. Marcus and his fellow humans stood out, their presence drawing curious and wary glances. Most of the alien recruits avoided them, whispering among themselves in their native tongues. It was clear they didn't think much of humanity's chances. One particularly disdainful glance came from a towering reptilian soldier, its scaled body adorned with ceremonial armor. The alien sneered, baring rows of sharp teeth. Another primitive species sent to the slaughter, it hissed, its voice dripping with contempt. Marcus met the alien's gaze without flinching. "We'll see who's left standing," he replied coolly. The reptilian growled but said nothing more. As the ship prepared for takeoff, Marcus leaned back in his seat, a faint smirk on his face. He knew humanity was being underestimated, and that suited him just fine. Throughout history, humans had thrived in the face of impossible odds. From surviving on a hostile planet to mastering the stars, their story was one of relentless perseverance. Let them think we're weak, Marcus thought. They'll learn soon enough what humans are capable of. The engines roared to life, and the ship ascended into the void of space. For Marcus and the other human recruits, this was the beginning of a journey that would take them far from Earth and into the heart of a galactic war. They didn't know what awaited them, but one thing was certain: they wouldn't back down. Humanity had answered the call, and they were ready to prove themselves, no matter the cost. The transport ship exited hyperspace with a jolt, revealing the massive structure of the Galactic training hub. Suspended in the vacuum of space, it was a sight to behold, a colossal, ring-shaped station orbiting a dying red star. The ring shimmered with energy fields, its surface bristling with weapons and docking ports. Even Marcus, who prided himself on keeping his cool, found himself momentarily awestruck. "This is it," he murmured, leaning forward to catch a better view from the ship's window. The hub was alive with activity. Massive freighters ferried supplies to and from the station, while sleek fighter craft zipped through the void on patrol. Marcus could see thousands of recruits disembarking from other transport ships, each species forming its own distinct group. Humanity's arrival, however, was anything but subtle. As the transport docked, Marcus and the other humans were ushered out by the alien crew. The docking bay was vast, its ceilings high enough to fit ships the size of buildings. The air smelled faintly metallic, and the walls glowed with dim, pulsating lights. Alien recruits stood in tight clusters, their eyes, or equivalent sensory organs, fixed on the new arrivals. The humans, for their part, made no effort to blend in. Their chatter echoed through the bay, and they walked with an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. Some carried personal mementos, a reminder of Earth, while others joked loudly, seemingly unfazed by the strange and intimidating environment. Marcus noticed the reactions of the alien recruits. There were scowls, sneers, and even open laughter. To them, the humans were out of their depth, primitive beings who didn't understand the magnitude of what they'd signed up for. Let them laugh, Marcus thought. They'll see soon enough. A towering figure emerged from the shadows, its heavy footsteps silencing the commotion. It was a Orc, a hulking quadrupedal alien species known for its brute strength and no-nonsense attitude. The Orc wore the insignia of the Imperial Command, its golden armor gleaming under the docking bay's lights. "I am Commander Vree," the alien announced, its voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the very walls. "You are no longer citizens of your homeworlds. From this moment forward, you serve the Galactic Empire. Your survival depends on your ability to work together. Species divisions will not be tolerated." Marcus exchanged a glance with his fellow humans. The commander's words were clear, but the skeptical looks from the alien recruits told a different story. Work together was easier said than done, especially when humans were regarded as an inferior species. The recruits were herded into the station's central chamber, where rows of holographic displays sprang to life. The training hub's AI, a disembodied voice with a calm yet authoritative tone, explained the training regimen. "Your physical limits will be tested." It began. "Your mental resilience will be pushed to its breaking point. You will face simulations designed to replicate encounters with the Zenther swarm. Failure is not an option." Marcus listened intently, his jaw tightening as he considered the challenges ahead. Humanity had faced countless threats throughout its history: wars, natural disasters, and even near-extinction events. This was different. The Zenther swarm was unlike anything Earth had ever encountered. But if humanity was anything, it was adaptable. The first test came sooner than expected. The recruits were split into mixed-species squads and sent into a simulated combat zone, a vast, holographic landscape filled with holograms of the swarm. Marcus found himself in a squad with a lizard-like Trachean, a crystalline Neru, and a burly, fur-covered Jork. None of them seemed thrilled to have a human as their squad leader, but Marcus wasn't about to back down. The simulation began with an ear-splitting roar as Zenther drones descended from the skies. They moved with terrifying speed, their biomechanical bodies glinting in the simulated sunlight. The squad scattered, each recruit relying on their species' natural abilities to fight. The Trachean darted through the underbrush with reptilian agility, while the Neru fired shards of its own crystal body as projectiles. Marcus, armed with a plasma rifle, quickly assessed the battlefield. The squad's lack of coordination was glaringly obvious. The recruits were fighting as individuals, not as a unit, and it was only a matter of time before the simulation overwhelmed them. "Focus fire on the drones. Form a perimeter," Marcus barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. The recruits hesitated, but the urgency in Marcus's tone left little room for argument. They began to follow his orders, their actions becoming more synchronized. The Trachean provided cover fire, the Neru laid down suppressing fire, and the Jork used its brute strength to hold back the drones. Despite their efforts, the swarm pressed on, forcing Marcus to adapt on the fly. He noticed that the drones seemed to prioritize targets with higher energy signatures, likely a flaw in the simulation's programming. Using this to his advantage, he drew the drones toward himself, allowing his squad to regroup and launch a counterattack. By the time the simulation ended, the squad was battered and exhausted, but they had managed to hold their ground. As the holographic landscape faded, Commander Vree stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Impressive," the Kork admitted reluctantly. "Perhaps there is more to your species than I expected." Marcus didn't respond. He was too busy analyzing the squad's performance, noting areas for improvement. He knew this was only the beginning. The real test would come when they faced the Zenther swarm in the flesh. For now, though, humanity had taken its first step toward earning the respect of the galaxy. And for Marcus, that was enough. Days turned into weeks, and the Galactic training hub became a crucible of relentless challenges. Marcus and his squad faced trial after trial, each more grueling than the last. The physical training was brutal, but it was the mental simulations that truly tested their limits. The Galactic Empire had spared no expense in creating scenarios that mimicked the Zenther swarm's sheer ferocity and cunning. One morning, Marcus was jolted awake by the sharp tone of the hub's alarm system. "Recruits, report to Simulation Chamber Omega immediately," the AI's calm voice instructed. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes and quickly suited up, his pulse quickening. Omega simulations were notorious for their difficulty, often claiming even the best recruits. As the squad assembled in the chamber, Marcus noticed a strange tension in the air. The room's walls shimmered with energy fields, and the holographic projectors hummed ominously. A crowd of recruits from other squads had gathered in observation decks above, eager to watch the spectacle unfold. Commander Vree's towering form loomed over the assembled recruits. "Today's simulation will separate the worthy from the unworthy," he declared. "The Omega scenario will replicate a Zenther invasion of an inhabited colony. Your objective is simple. Survive." Marcus exchanged a glance with his squad. The Trachean, whose name he had learned was Chris, flicked his tongue nervously. The crystalline Neru, called ZYX, stood stoically, while the Jork, Raylan, cracked his knuckles in anticipation. The chamber's lights dimmed, and the environment shifted. In an instant, the recruits were standing in the middle of a ruined colony. Buildings lay in smoldering heaps, and the air was thick with the acrid stench of burning metal. The distant sound of chittering filled the air, sending shivers down Marcus's spine. "Stick together," Marcus ordered, gripping his plasma rifle tightly. The first wave came swiftly. Zenther drones poured out of the shadows, their razor-sharp appendages gleaming in the dim light. The squad fell into formation, with Marcus barking orders to keep them coordinated. Raylan charged headfirst into the fray, his immense strength smashing drones into pieces. Chris moved with serpentine grace, striking from unexpected angles, while ZYX provided precision fire from a distance. Despite their efforts, the drones kept coming. They adapted quickly, targeting weak points in the squad's formation. Marcus's mind raced as he formulated a strategy. "Fall back to the central plaza," he shouted. "We'll bottleneck them there." The squad retreated, fighting off the relentless swarm as they moved. When they reached the plaza, Marcus noticed a series of abandoned turrets scattered around the area. "Raylan, set up those turrets. Chris, cover him. ZYX, take high ground and provide overwatch." The squad moved with surprising efficiency, their earlier mistrust replaced by a growing sense of camaraderie. The turrets roared to life, cutting through the drones with devastating efficiency. ZYX's crystalline projectiles rained down from above, and Chris's quick reflexes kept the drones at bay. But the simulation wasn't done with them yet. A deafening roar echoed through the colony as a massive Zenter overlord emerged from the ruins. The creature was monstrous, its body a grotesque blend of chitin and machinery. It moved with terrifying speed, its biomechanical limbs smashing through obstacles with ease. "Focus fire on the Overlord," Marcus commanded. The squad unleashed everything they had, but the Overlord was relentless. It shrugged off plasma blasts and turret fire as if they were mere annoyances. Raylan charged at the beast, his fists pounding against its armored hide, but the Overlord swatted him aside like a rag doll. Marcus's mind raced. He needed a plan, and fast. His eyes darted around the plaza, searching for anything that could give them an edge. Then he saw it, a power generator partially buried under rubble. If they could overload it, the resulting explosion might be enough to take the Overlord down. "Chris, ZYX, keep it distracted," Marcus shouted. "Raylan, help me with the generators." The squad sprang into action. Chris and ZYX harried the Overlord, drawing its attention away from Marcus and Raylan. Together, the two of them dug the generator out from under the rubble. "This thing's unstable," Raylan muttered, his voice tinged with worry. "Good," Marcus replied. "That's what we need." With a few swift adjustments, Marcus rigged the generator to overload. Sparks flew as the device hummed ominously. "Everyone fall back," he yelled. The squad retreated just as the generator detonated, in a blinding flash of light and heat. The explosion engulfed the Overlord. Its screech of rage cut short as it was torn apart by the blast. When the smoke cleared, the simulation ended. The ruined colony dissolved into the sterile walls of the training chamber, and the recruits were left standing in stunned silence. Commander Vree approached, his expression unreadable. "Impressive," he admitted grudgingly. "Few squads survive the Omega scenario, let alone defeat the Overlord. Perhaps there is hope for you humans after all." Marcus said nothing. His body ached, and his mind was a whirlwind of exhaustion and adrenaline. But deep down, he felt a flicker of pride. Humanity had proven itself once again, and Marcus knew this was just the beginning. The simulation's conclusion brought a brief moment of respite for Marcus and his squad. The observation deck above erupted in murmurs and applause, though not all of it seemed genuine. Many alien recruits still regarded humans with skepticism, their expressions betraying doubt. Marcus knew the road to respect was far from over. As the recruits filed out of the simulation chamber, Marcus found himself summoned to Commander Vree's private office. The towering aliens' chambers were a stark contrast to the sterile training facility. The walls were adorned with holographic banners displaying the Empire's conquests, each one a testament to their dominion over the galaxy. "Sit," Vree commanded, gesturing to a metallic chair that adjusted to Marcus's human proportions as he approached. Marcus took his seat, his muscles still aching from the simulation. He had no idea what to expect, but he wasn't about to show weakness. "Your performance today exceeded expectations," Vree began, pacing slowly behind his desk. "The Omega simulation is designed to break squads, not forge them into cohesive units. Yet your team not only survived, it triumphed. Marcus nodded slightly, unsure of where this was heading. Vree stopped pacing and leaned forward, his piercing yellow eyes locking onto Marcus's. You have proven that humanity possesses more than mere tenacity. You have a tactical mind, one that could serve the Empire well. The words hung in the air for a moment before Vree continued. The Empire is facing an unprecedented threat. The Zenther swarm grows bolder with each passing day, and our current strategies are failing. We need soldiers who can think outside the box, who can adapt and overcome. Soldiers like you. Marcus felt a mix of pride and caution. Are you offering me a position in your forces? Not just any position, Vree replied. I am offering you a place in the Vanguard Initiative, the Empire's elite unit tasked with spearheading operations against the Zenther swarm. It is the most dangerous job in the galaxy, but also the most prestigious. The risks are immense, but so are the rewards. Marcus considered the offer carefully. He had joined this program to represent humanity, to prove their worth on a galactic stage. But this was more than he had bargained for. The Vanguard Initiative was legendary, but its mortality rate was equally infamous. What's the catch? Marcus asked, his tone cautious. Vree allowed himself a faint smirk. The catch, as you put it, is that failure is not an option. The Vanguard Initiative operates on the fringes of the Empire, often without backup or support. You will face challenges that would make today's simulation seem like a mere warm-up. But the resources at your disposal will be unparalleled, and the Empire will reward your successes generously. Marcus leaned back in his chair, weighing his options. He thought of Earth, of the billions of lives that would benefit from humanity's growing place in the galaxy. Accepting this offer could elevate humanity's standing, but it could also lead to its death. I'll need my squad, Marcus said finally. We've proven we can work together. I won't take this job without them. Vree's smirk widened, as if he had expected this response. Very well. Your squad will be briefed and given the choice to join you. But make no mistake, Marcus Steele. Once you accept, there is no turning back. Marcus stood, his decision made. Then consider me in. Back in the barracks, Marcus gathered his squad. The Trachean Chris was coiled around his bunk, his elongated body twitching with curiosity. Raylan, the towering Jorek, was busy sharpening his claws on a chunk of alloy he had picked up during training. ZYX, the crystalline Neru, sat in meditative silence, his translucent body refracting the dim light of the room. What's this about, Marcus? Raylan rumbled, his deep voice reverberating through the small space. We've been offered a job, Marcus began. He explained the Vanguard Initiative and what it entailed, sparing no details about the risks. It's dangerous, but it's an opportunity to make a real difference. I told Vree I wouldn't go without you, but the choice is yours. Chris flicked his forked tongue, his eyes narrowing. The Vanguard Initiative? I've heard stories. Most who join never come back. Which means more glory for those who do, Raylan interjected, a savage grin spreading across his face. I'm in. ZYX tilted his head, the crystalline facets of his body glinting softly. The Zenther swarm threatens us all. To combat them is a noble cause. I will join. All eyes turned to Chris, who hesitated for a moment before nodding. Fine. But if we die, I'm haunting you, human. Marcus couldn't help but laugh. Fair enough. The squad reported to the Vanguard Initiative's briefing room the next morning. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with anticipation. A holographic display flickered to life, showing the vast expanse of the galaxy and the growing red tide that marked the Zenther swarm's territory. Our mission, the holographic AI began, is to strike at the heart of the swarm. Intelligence has identified a critical nexus point in their hive network. Destroying it will cripple their coordination, and buy the Empire much-needed time. Marcus exchanged a glance with his squad. This was it. The first step in their journey as part of the Vanguard Initiative. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They were in this together, and they would face whatever challenges came their way as a team. The squad's journey to the Zenther Swarm's nexus began aboard the Vindicator, a sleek, heavily armored starship outfitted with the latest in Imperial technology. The Vanguard Initiative didn't deal in standard military fare. Their equipment and resources represented the pinnacle of galactic engineering. As the ship hummed with power, Marcus couldn't help but marvel at the cutting-edge systems. The Vindicator's bridge was alive with activity. Alien engineers, pilots, and strategists worked in unison, each task vital to the mission's success. A holographic display of the swarm's nexus dominated the center of the room, its crimson tendrils pulsating like veins on a beating heart. The sight sent a shiver down Marcus's spine. The Zenther swarm, Raylan muttered as he joined Marcus at the display. Hard to believe something so organic could bring the Empire to its knees. It's not just organic, ZYX chimed in, his crystalline voice resonating softly. The swarm operates as a hive mind, each individual contributing to a collective intelligence. They adapt rapidly, learning from every encounter. It's what makes them so dangerous. Chris coiled up beside them, his tongue flicking in thought. And we're supposed to dive into that chaos and destroy their nexus? Sounds like suicide. It's a challenge, Marcus replied, his voice steady. But challenges are what we signed up for. The squad's briefing was interrupted by the arrival of their mission coordinator, Lieutenant Dren, a grizzled reptilian veteran with scars etched across his scaled face. Dren had the air of someone who had seen far too many battles and lived to tell the tale. Listen up, Dren growled, his voice commanding immediate attention. The swarm's nexus isn't just some random target. It's heavily fortified and crawling with drones. You'll be going in hot, so don't expect an easy ride. He gestured to the hologram, which zoomed in on a massive bioorganic structure that pulsed with an eerie red glow. This is the core. Destroy it, and you'll sever the swarm's neural network in this sector. But the swarm won't make it easy. They'll throw everything they've got to protect it. What's our entry plan? Marcus asked, already running scenarios through his mind. The Vindicator will drop you at the edge of the swarm's territory, Dren explained. From there, you'll take a stealth shuttle to infiltrate the Nexus. Your objective is simple. Plan to destabilize a charge at the core and get out alive. Questions? Raylan cracked his knuckles, his grin feral. Just one. How many of them can I kill on the way out? Dren snorted, amused. As many as you like, Jorek. Just don't get yourself killed in the process. The squad suited up in the Vanguard Initiative signature armor. Lightweight, yet nearly impenetrable, designed for mobility and resilience. Each suit was customized to its wearer, with advanced neural interfaces that enhance reflexes and situational awareness. Marcus's armor felt like a second skin, its dark plating glinting faintly under the ship's lights. The stealth shuttle was a stark contrast to the Vindicator. Its interior was cramped, its walls lined with weapons and equipment. As the squad strapped in, the tension was palpable. This was no simulation. The stakes were real, and failure meant death. Final checks, Marcus said, his voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Weapons, primed and ready, Raylan growled, his claws flexing. Cloaking systems operational, ZYX added, his crystalline form shimmering faintly. Stealth drones prepped, Chris hissed, his tail coiling tightly. Marcus nodded, satisfied. Good. Let's do this. The shuttle's descent into the swarm's territory was unervingly smooth, the cloaking systems masking their presence from the swarm sensors. Outside the narrow viewport, the swarm's domain stretched endlessly, a nightmarish landscape of bioorganic growth and pulsating tendrils. As they approached the Nexus, the shuttle's pilot, a stoic reptilian named Vex, spoke over the comms. We're nearing the drop zone. You've got 10 minutes to get in and out before the swarm adapts to our cloaking tech. Don't dawdle. The shuttle landed with a barely audible thud, its ramp lowering to reveal the Nexus's outer perimeter. The air was thick with an acrid stench, and the ground squelched underfoot, alive with the swarm's organic infrastructure. "Move out," Marcus ordered, his squad falling into formation. The Nexus was a labyrinthine structure, its walls pulsating with bioluminescent light. The squad moved swiftly, their stealth systems rendering them nearly invisible. But the swarm was not without its defenses. Drones patrolled the corridors, their insect-like forms clicking and chittering as they searched for intruders. 2 drones, 10 meters ahead, Chris whispered, his forked tongue flicking out. "I'll take them," Raylan replied, his claws gleaming. "No," Marcus interjected. "We stick to the plan. Avoid engagement unless absolutely necessary." The squad navigated the Nexus with precision, each member relying on their unique skills to avoid detection. Chris's keen senses identified patrol routes. ZYX's crystalline body absorbed and refracted light to enhance their stealth, and Raylan's brute strength cleared obstacles silently. As they neared the core, the ambient light grew brighter, the walls pulsing more intensely. The Nexus's heart was close, and the swarm seemed to sense their presence. Drones began to swarm the corridors, their movements more erratic and aggressive. "We're running out of time," Marcus said, his voice tense. Double time it to the core, the squad broke into a sprint, their stealth systems struggling to keep up with their rapid movements. The core chamber loomed ahead, its entrance guarded by a massive drone unlike anything they had encountered before. "Plan?" Raylan asked, his claws twitching in anticipation. Marcus assessed the situation quickly. "Chris, deploy the EMP charge to disable the guard. ZYX, set up a barrier to block reinforcements. Raylan, you're with me. We take it down." The plan was executed flawlessly. Chris's EMP charge sent the massive drone into spasms, its systems temporarily fried. ZYX's crystalline energy formed a shimmering barrier, holding back the advancing swarm. Marcus and Raylan struck with precision, their combined assault overwhelming the drone's defenses. With the Guardian defeated, the squad entered the core chamber. The sight was both awe-inspiring and horrifying. A massive, pulsating structure that seemed almost alive, its veins glowing with a sinister red light. "Plant the charge," Marcus ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. ZYX moved quickly, attaching the destabilizer to the core. "Charge set. We have 5 minutes to evac." The squad turned to leave, but the swarm had other plans. The chamber trembled as drones poured in from every direction, their collective screeches deafening. "Hold them off!" Marcus shouted, his weapon blazing as the squad fought their way back to the shuttle. The core chamber erupted into chaos as the squad fought their way through an unending tide of Zenta drones. The destabilizer charge was already ticking down, its faint glow a cruel reminder of their rapidly diminishing window for escape. Every step toward the exit felt like a battle against a living ocean of chittering limbs and glowing red eyes. "Move! Don't stop!" Marcus shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of shrieks and the rapid-fire bursts of their weapons. Raylan led the charge, his claws cleaving through drones with savage efficiency. Behind him, ZYX projected shimmering crystalline shields, deflecting the acidic projectiles that the drones spewed. Chris used his whip-like tail to sweep drones off their feet, while Marcus covered the rear, ensuring no one was left behind. "They're adapting," ZYX called out, his voice tense. "They're focusing on the weak points in our formation." Marcus gritted his teeth. Of course, the swarm would adapt. That was their defining trait. ZYX, reinforce the rear. Chris, watch the flanks. Raylan, keep pushing forward. Don't stop until we're out of here. The squad pressed on, the narrow, pulsating corridors of the Nexus seemingly alive, shifting and writhing as if trying to trap them. The swarm's drones grew more coordinated with every passing second, exploiting every gap in the squad's defenses. "Contact ahead," Raylan growled, his claws dripping with the ichor of countless drones. A group of larger, more heavily armored drones blocked their path, their mandibles clicking ominously. Raylan, Focus fire, Marcus barked, switching his weapon to high-explosive rounds. The confined space magnified the blast, but the drones crumbled under the combined assault. The squad surged forward, adrenaline and desperation driving them as the countdown ticked dangerously close to 0. 2 minutes left, ZYX warned, his crystalline shields beginning to crack under the relentless onslaught. They finally burst into the open air of the Nexus's outer perimeter. But their relief was short-lived. The swarm wasn't about to let them escape so easily. Drones poured out of the structure, their numbers seemingly endless. "Where's the shuttle?" Chris hissed, his tail whipping through the air to decapitate an advancing drone. "Hold position," Marcus shouted. "Vex is coming." As if on cue, the stealth shuttle roared into view, its engines glowing brightly against the swarm's organic backdrop. The ramp dropped, and the pilot's voice crackled over the comms. "Move it! This place is about to blow." The squad sprinted toward the shuttle, their every step contested by drones that clawed at their heels. Marcus turned, firing his last explosive round to create a momentary barrier of flame and destruction. "Go! Get on board!" Raylan reached the ramp first, hauling ZYX up as the crystalline alien stumbled, his shields flickering out. Chris was next, his serpentine movements swift and precise as he lashed out at a drone before leaping aboard. Marcus was the last, his armor scarred and smoking as he dove onto the ramp just as it began to retract. "Punch it, Vex!" Marcus yelled, slamming his fist against the shuttle's bulkhead. The pilot didn't need to be told twice. The shuttle's engines roared to life, propelling them away from the Nexus at breakneck speed. Behind them, the destabilizer charge detonated, the resulting explosion consuming the Nexus in a blinding flash of light and energy. The shockwave rocked the shuttle, but it held steady, the hull groaning under the strain. The squad collapsed into their seats, panting and bloody but alive. The view from the shuttle's viewport showed the Nexus collapsing in on itself, its once massive structure reduced to a smoldering ruin. "We did it," Raylan said, his grin feral despite the exhaustion etched on his face. "We actually did it." ZYX nodded, his crystalline form dim but intact. "The neural network in this sector is severed. The swarm will take time to recover. We've bought the Empire a critical advantage." Chris coiled himself into a resting position, his forked tongue flicking lazily. "And we live to tell the tale. That's the part that surprises me." Marcus leaned back against the bulkhead, his weapon resting on his lap. "Good work, everyone. But this isn't over. The swarm will adapt. They always do. We need to be ready for whatever comes next." As the shuttle ascended into the starry expanse of space, the squad allowed themselves a brief moment of triumph. They had faced the deadliest force in the galaxy and emerged victorious. But deep down, they knew this was just one battle in an endless war. "Marcus," Vex's voice crackled over the comms, interrupting their thoughts. "You're not going to like this. We've got incoming signals, multiple swarm signatures. They're converging on our location." The squad's brief respite ended as quickly as it began. Marcus stood, his exhaustion replaced by steely resolve, prepped for evasive maneuvers. "And someone get me a weapon. If the swarm wants a fight, we'll give them one." The shuttle's interior was bathed in red as the alarms blared, signaling the approach of their relentless enemy. The battle was far from over. The red warning lights pulsated across the shuttle's cramped interior, reflecting on the battered faces of the squad. The swarm wasn't going to let them escape easily. The targeting alarms wailed as multiple bogies appeared on the sensors, their speed closing the gap between predator and prey. "Marcus, we've got 3 swarm interceptors coming in fast." Vex's voice was tense, almost strained. "They're deploying hive missiles. I can try to outmaneuver them, but it's going to be close." "Do it, Vex. We've got no other choice," Marcus barked as he tightened his grip on the overhead bar to steady himself. Everyone else, man the guns and hold on to something. This is going to get rough. The squad snapped into action. ZYX moved to the central console, interfacing with the ship's targeting systems, his crystalline arms glowing as he directed the automated turrets. Raylan and Chris secured themselves in the gunnery pods, their respective weapon systems coming online with a low hum of energy. The shuttle banked sharply, the inertial dampeners struggling to keep up with Vex's evasive maneuvers. Behind them, the swarm interceptors screamed through the void, their insectoid forms bristling with organic weaponry. Hive missiles detached from their undercarriages, swarming toward the shuttle with deadly precision. Missiles inbound, ZYX warned, his voice reverberating with urgency. Not for long. Raylan growled as he unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts from the rear turret. The first missile exploded in a blinding flash, but more were already replacing it, their relentless momentum undeterred. "Can't shake them," Vex shouted. "They're adapting to my maneuvers." Marcus moved to the cockpit, assessing the situation. "Can we dump a decoy?" he asked, scanning the controls. Vex shook his head. "Out of countermeasures. We used the last of them getting out of the Nexus." Marcus clenched his jaw. "Then we make our stand here. Raylan, Chris, focus fire on those interceptors. ZYX, use the turrets to clear out the missiles." The shuttle rocked violently as the first of the missiles detonated too close for comfort. Sparks flew from the overhead panels, and the smell of burning electronics filled the cabin. Despite the chaos, the squad remained focused, their training and instinct kicking in. "I've got one," Chris shouted as his plasma cannon tore through an interceptor's wing. The alien craft spiraled out of control before erupting into a fiery explosion. "Two more to go," Raylan growled, his claws digging into the controls as he targeted another interceptor. ZYX's crystalline form shimmered as he worked furiously, the turret systems responding to his commands with deadly precision. One by one, the missiles were picked off, their organic shells disintegrating under a hail of plasma fire. But the swarm was relentless, and more missiles were already on their way. "They just keep coming," ZYX said, his voice tinged with frustration. "We can't hold them off forever." Marcus glanced at the rapidly approaching interceptors, then at the pulsating nebula ahead of them. An idea began to form in his mind, a risky, desperate idea. "Vex, take us into the nebula." The pilot's head snapped around. "Are you insane? The radiation levels in there will fry us." "Not if we stay in the outer layer," Marcus countered. "The interference will disrupt their targeting systems. It's our only chance." Vex hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding. "Hold on to something. This is going to get messy." The shuttle plunged into the swirling colors of the nebula, the view outside the viewport turning into a kaleidoscope of shifting hues. Alarms blared as the ship's systems struggled to compensate for the electromagnetic interference. The swarm interceptors hesitated at the nebula's edge, their movements erratic as their targeting systems faltered. "It's working," ZYX said, relief evident in his voice. "Their missiles are losing lock." "Don't celebrate yet," Marcus warned. "They'll adapt. They always do." Sure enough, the interceptors began to recalibrate, their organic forms pulsating as they adjusted to the nebula's interference. One of them dove into the swirling chaos, its weapons primed and ready. "Take it down," Marcus shouted. Raylan and Chris opened fire, their plasma bolts lighting up the nebula as they converge on the approaching craft. The interceptor weaved through the barrage with unnerving precision, its organic hull seeming to shift and flow to avoid the incoming fire. "It's too fast," Raylan growled. Marcus grabbed a spare launcher from the weapons rack and made his way to the rear hatch. "Keep it distracted. I'll handle it." "Are you crazy?" Chris called after him. "You can't take that thing out on your own." "Watch me," Marcus replied, his voice steely. He opened the hatch, the force of the nebula's turbulent winds slamming into him as he braced himself against the frame. He locked the launcher onto the interceptor, waiting for the perfect moment. The alien craft zeroed in on the shuttle, its weapons glowing ominously as it prepared to fire. Marcus took a deep breath, steadying his aim. "Come on, just a little closer." At the last second, Marcus fired. The missile streaked through the nebula, its propulsion system struggling against the interference. For a moment, it looked as though it would miss. But then it struck true, slamming into the interceptor's core. The alien craft exploded in a brilliant burst of light, its debris scattering into the nebula. Marcus fell back into the cabin, pulling the hatch shut as the squad erupted into cheers. "One left," he said, his voice grim. "Let's finish this." The remaining interceptor, sensing its disadvantage, began to retreat. But the squad wasn't about to let it escape. With coordinated precision, they unleashed a final barrage, their combined firepower reducing the craft to ashes. As the last of the swarm's forces disappeared from the sensors, the shuttle limped out of the nebula, its systems barely holding together. The squad collapsed into their seats, exhausted but victorious. "Status?" Marcus asked, his voice hoarse. "Shields are fried, engines are barely functional, and we've got enough power for one jump," Vex reported. "But we're alive." Marcus nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Set a course for the nearest outpost. Let's go home." As the shuttle entered hyperspace, the squad allowed themselves a moment of quiet reflection. They had faced the deadliest force in the galaxy and survived. But they knew the war was far from over. The swarm would return, stronger and more relentless than ever. And when they did, humanity would be ready.